Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf, which is YOMA Yud Zayin. We begin at the second line from the top of the Amud. Now, we had a stiro between a Mishnah in Maseches Tamid and a Mishnah in Maseches Midos as to the exact location of Lishkas Hatzloim, which was where they kept the pre-inspected behemoths, which were designated for the Karban Tamid. Now, what we know for sure is that this Lishka was located within this larger Lishkas Beis Hamoiked, which was an unroofed large room, and in each one of its four corners there was another room, a Lishka. One of those rooms was Lishkas Hatzloim. Now, in which corner was it? We have a machlekes, a stira between two Mishnayos. The Mishnah Maseches Tamid describes it as being situated in the Marav Tzafon corner of the Lishkas Beis HaMoiked. Whereas in the Mishnah in Midos, we have it described as being in the Marav Darim corner of Lishkas Beis HaMoiked. So which one was it? Earlier the Gemara suggested that perhaps it's Machlekes Tanoi. Each Mishnah represents a different shita. Now the Gemara will present another way to answer the kasha, in which case it will turn out that there really isn't a machlekes. They're both describing the same exact location. It depends on perspective. It depends from which direction you're coming. It's really an optical illusion. Says the Gemara two lines from the top of Ada Breder of Yitzchak Amar, Hai Lishka. This Lishkas Hatzlaim Aksuye Miktsaya was actually close to both sides, to Tzafon and to Darim. It wasn't exactly in the corner. It was somewhere along that Marav side, and close to each side. And this way it appeared to the fellow coming from Tzafon like it was on the other side, on the Darim corner of Marav. And the fellow coming from Darim, to him it appeared like it's only on the other side, by Tzafon. With the Asim, it's Tzafon, the fellow coming from Tzafon, Mischazile B'Darim, it would appear to him as though it's in the Darim corner of Marav. With the Asim B'Darim, and the fellow arriving from Darim, Mischazile B'Tzafon. It would appear to him like the Lishka is all the way in the Tzafon Marav corner. So it was an optical illusion, but in reality, it wasn't in either corner. It was somewhere along the wall. Umistavra. It would seem logical. The B'Marav is Droimis Havai. It was actually closer to Darim. It was more in Marav Darim than in Marav Tzafon. First, let's take a look at Rashi here. So we have the wide lines of Rashi, and it's about in the middle of the wide lines. Rav Ada bar Yitzchak Amar, Ha Lishkas Hatloim Aktsuye Mektsaya. B'shtei Mektsoyes Niris. It would be seen close to both corners. Sharuka Hi, it was a rather longer type of room meant to contain the animals. Vayimedes b'Marav. It was at the Marav side. Umarechas l'tzadat Tzafon v'Darim, and would stretch over, extend over to Tzafon and Darim. Ad Karev l'Mektsoyes shemekan u'mekan. Rather close to the side of Darim and the side of Tzafon. And that's what set up the confusion. The Asim at Tzafon, Mischazile, when one is coming from Tzafon, it appears to him, Shemeshuchel l'tzad Darim, he says, it's pulled more over to Darim, because he's coming towards it looks like it's on the other side. When the Asim at Darim is Chazile, Mishuchel l'tzad Tzafon, the fellow who's coming from Darim, to him it appears as though it's pulled over to Tzafon. It appears that the true correct location was closer to Darim than to Tzafon. Umoide Batana, the Tamid, even the Tan of Tamid really agrees that it was more in the Darim corner than the Tzafon corner. But when he describes that as being in Marav Tzafoni's corner, it's simply reflecting his direction from which he's arriving. To him it appears like it's all at the Tzafon corner of Marav, but in reality it was alongside the Marav wall and closer to Darim than to Tzafon. Meaning, since it was closer to Darim, and we know that there was a Lishka situated in each one of those four corners, so this Lishkas Hatloim, which was in reality closer to the Darim corner of the Marav rather than the Tzafon corner of Marav, it allowed for another room which was actually situated exactly at the corner of Marav Tzafon, and so on and so forth. Going along the corners, each corner had another room. Back to the Gemara. It seems plausible that this Lishkas Atlaim, which ran alongside the Marav wall, was actually closer to Darim, and it allowed for another room at the Marav Tzafin corner. How do we know this? Mimai. Because actually we had another kasha, another stira between both missions. We actually had a stira between the Mishnah and Tamid, and the Mishnah Midas regarding the exact location of the Lechem HaPanim room, which also occupied a corner of that Lishkas Beis HaMagid. Where was that room? Was it Mizrach Tzafin corner or Mizrach Darim corner? Now, the Mishnah and Tamid, which seemed up to this point to be describing the Lishkas Atlaim as situated in the Marav Tzafin corner, that's what we thought originally, and then the Mishnah goes down the list. There were 4 Lishka situated in 4 corners. So you begin with Lishkas Atlaim, which was presumably in Marav Tzafin corner. And we assume that when you go down a list, just like we spoke about when you surround the Mizbeach, you go derech Yemin, you go towards your right, following your right hand, meaning when you're facing that Lishkas Beis HaMoiked, let's view it from the outside. You're going around that square from the outside and you're facing it. So you follow your right hand, which leads you to go, let's say, going along Marav, it leads you to make a sort of left turn over to Darim, because again, you're facing the room, you're facing the square, you're facing the structure, and you're going to be following your right hand, which is going to take you from Marav to Darim, and then you're going to go along Darim, and then make that turn over to Mizrach, and over to Tzafin, all along, following your right hand, Derech Yemin. So if the Lishkas Atlaim took you from the corner of Marav and Tzafin, you went over to your next stop, which was Marav Darim, the next Lishka on the list, and then the third Lishka on the list will take you to Darim Mizrach, and the final destination, which is the 4th Lishka on the list, in the Meseches Tamid Mishnah, which was Lishkas Lechem HaPanim, that was Mizrach Tzafin. So according to that Mishnah, Lechem HaPanim was situated at the Mizrach Tzafin corner. Okay. However, according to the Mishnah Midas, where was the Lishka, where they would bake Lechem HaPanim, was in a different corner. The Mishnah clearly says it was in Mizrach Darim. How do we reconcile this stira? So, being that we came up with the solution, we rearranged the rooms here, we repositioned the Lishkas Atlaim, that's going to provide a solution for this question as well. Again, says the Gemara, it seems that this Lishkas Atlaim, which was alongside the Marav, was leaning more towards Marav Darim, the Marav is Drei, which allowed for another room at that corner of Marav Tzafin. Because this room was pulled over to Marav Darim, so it allowed another Lishka at the other corner, Marav Tzafin, and that somehow would provide a solution to the next year. How do we know that it was so? Since we had a steer, a kasha, from the way Mishnah and Talmud describes the Lechem HaPanim location, as opposed to the way the Mishnah Midas describes this location. And we provide a solution as follows. It depends how you're walking. The Mishnah in Tamid is going derech smoil, not following the procedure of following your right hand, etc. He's going to go derech smoil. We'll see soon why he chose that route, but that's the pshat in the Mishnah in Tamid. He is walking along the Lishkas Beis HaMoiked, following his left hand, whereas the Mishnah in Midas is following his right hand derech Yemin. Which means like this: we have the Lishkas Beis HaMoiked, we have Marav on top, Tzafin on the right, Darim on the left, Mizrach on bottom. We have the Lishkas Hatslaim, which we've now determined as being somewhere between Tzafin and Darim, alongside the Marav wall, and we determined that it was actually closer to Darim. It was technically sort of in the Marav Darim corner, which allowed for another room at Marav Tzafin. Now, the Mishnah in Talmud tells us we have 4 rooms, 4 lishkas situated in all 4 corners of that Lishkas Beis HaMoiked. Beginning, I'll count from the Lishkas Atlaim. Now, if technically Lishkas Atlaim occupy the Marav Darim corner, as we've just established, we're not going to go derech Yemin. We're going to go derech Smoil. So picture yourself facing this square, this lishkas based on this entire structure, standing on the outside of it and facing it, facing the lishkas atlaim, on the Ma'ariv side. Now you'll follow your left hand, derech smol. In which direction you're going to go? To Tzafin, over to Tzafin. So lishka number 1 on your list will be lishkas atlaim. Go over to Ma'ariv Tzafin, that's lishka number 2. Then you can go over alongside Tzafin, because again you're following your left hand. So going along Tzafin takes you to Mizrach. Now you're at the Mizrach Tzafin corner, that's your third stop, your third lishka. And then you swing over to Mizrach, following your left hand again, all the way over to the Mizrach Darim corner. Now you've ended up at your fourth stop, at the fourth lishka, which was described in Mishnah and Talmud as being Lechem HaPanim. It turns out that according to this configuration, even the Mishnah and Talmud realizes that the Lechem HaPanim was in Mizrach Darim corner, which is exactly how it was described by the Mishnah and Midas. So again, this was because we allowed ourselves to shift Lishkas Atlaim over. Instead of it being Ma'ariv Tzafin, no, it was an optical illusion. It appeared to him like it was Ma'ariv Tzafin because he was coming from the other side, from Durham. So he thought it was all on the other side, but technically it was a Ma'ariv Durham corner. It was alongside the wall, but closer to Durham. In which case it was another Lishka in the actual corner of Ma'ariv Tzafin. Another Lishka in Mizrach Tzafin. And the fourth Lishka, the final destination, the fourth Lishka on this Tana's list was Lechem HaPanim, which was actually Mizrach Durham corner. Now, the Mishnah Midas was going the other way. That's why the Mishnah Midas tells us, well, the first Lishka, which was in Ma'ariv Durham, was Lishkas Atlaim. And the next Lishka, which was Lechem HaPanim, was in Mizrach Durham. Why, according to him, was it the second stop on his journey? Because he was going the other direction, Derech Yamin. Derech Yamin means that if you're facing the Lishkas Atlaim from the outside, you're standing on the outside of this Beis HaMikdash structure. You're standing on the Ma'ariv side, facing the structure, facing the Lishkas Atlaim. And you follow your right hand. Liyamin. That takes you over to Durham. Then you turn around Durham, you follow the Durham over along your right hand, along the Yamin, and you follow your right hand to Mizrach. So that's the next stop on your journey. The second Lishka was Lechem HaPanim, exactly as described in the Mishnah Midas. And Lechem HaPanim's room was situated in Mizrach Darim. So now we've answered all the steers. We actually had two questions. One regarding the exact location of Lishkas Hatzlaim. In one Mishnah it was situated in Ma'ariv Darim. In the other Mishnah seemed to be situated in Ma'ariv Tzafin. And one responded, no, really, all agree it was in Ma'ariv Darim. It was somewhere in the middle, and it appeared to that Tana as though it's in Ma'ariv Tzafin, but in reality, it was pulled closer to Ma'ariv Darim. So that's technically where that Lishka was located. The second kasha was regarding the location of the Lechem HaPanim room. According to the Mishnah and Talmud, it was the fourth item on the list, in which case it seemed to be elsewhere than described by the Mishnah Midas, which puts it at Mizrach Darim. The one responds, they both hold it was Mizrach Darim. It just depends from which direction you're coming. So Marka Chasha Derech Yamin, the Mishnah in Midas, which lists the Lishkas Lechem HaPanim as the second item on the list, was because he was coming Derech Yamin. He began after Lishkas Atlaim and followed his right hand over to Darim and over to Mizrach. We ended up Lechem HaPanim on a second stop. Marka Chashav Derech Smol, the Mishnah in Talmud, who began up at Lishkas Atlaim but took the other route, went Derech Smol all the way around to Tzafin, to Mizrach, and all the way to Mizrach Darim for his final destination, the Mishkas Lechem HaPanim. Says the Gemara, well, this works well if you say the Lishkas Atlaim was technically in the Ma'ariv Darim corner, which allows for another room at the Ma'ariv Tzafin corner. And according to Mishnah and Talmud, that would be his second Lishka on his list. And then over to Mizrach Tzafin, which was the third item on the list. And the fourth Lishka was Mizrach Darim, which was Lechem HaPanim. Now everything works. Hainu de Metaretz. Lechem HaPanim, Lechem HaPanim. This provides a proper solution for the stira regarding Lechem HaPanim. Eli Amr Tzvenis Ma'aravis Havoi. But if you maintain the earlier position that the Lishkas Atlaim, according to the Mishnah and Talmud, was actually in Tzafin Ma'ariv corner, not in Tzafin, not in Ma'ariv Darim, rather in Ma'ariv Tzafin, now you're in trouble. Safe, mighty roots of Lechem HaPanim. ultimately, what is going to be your solution regarding lechem apanim? Because if the lishkas atlaim was in Marav Tzafin according to that shita, and then he lists 4 lishkas, the fourth and final one being lechem apanim, it takes you all the way around, and it's not going to end up in Mizrach Darim, actually going to be shifted over one more, and you're going to end up in Marav Darim for the lechem apanim, which is different than the Mishnah Midas, which described it as being in Mizrach Darim. Elav Shmamina. This proves to us, Marav Droimis, Havoy Shmamina. Indeed, this is a raya that Lishkas Atlaim was technically in Marav Darim, although the Mishnah Talmud describes it as being in Marav Tzafin. It was just an optical illusion because he was coming from Darim and it appeared to him like it was on the other side. It wasn't in the Marav Tzafin corner, but really it was closer to him. It was in Marav Darim, which allowed for another Lishka to actually be situated in Marav Tzafin. That was the second Lishka on his list. The third Lishka being Tzafin Mizrach, and the fourth and final one, Mizrach Darim, which works very well with the Mishnah Midas. That also describes Lishkas lechem apanim as being at the Marav Darim corner. Says we have one more shaila. Why was he taking it left? Why was he following his left hand? Derech smile. V'amar mar, haven't we learned? Kol pinei shata poine lo yu ela derech yimin lemizrach. When one is meant to make a turn, he's meant to turn to his right. So why is this fellow following his left hand? It only applies to avoida, for instance, circling the mizbeach for avoida purposes, etc. Here the Tana is simply describing the location of the rooms. He wasn't actually going around the lishkas v'samoykid. He wasn't doing any avoida. He was just calculating for us and describing for us the exact configuration of that structure, in which case he decided to take it in the other direction, and that's fine. So in conclusion, we had 2 steroids regarding the location of Lishkas Atloim and Lishkas Lechem Apanim, and we reconciled the apparent contradiction. They're really both in the same exact location. It's all relative to the direction from which he was arriving. The Gemara continues with a reference back to the Mishnah. Kohen Gadol had special privileges throughout the year. Kohen Gadol makriv chelik b'rosh. Kohen Gadol can choose to be makriv, the most important korban, the most important part of the korban. V'noitel chalak b'rosh. When it comes to eating, he can choose the best cut of the behemoth. That was his privilege. He gets first choice, first rights. Tana Rabbanon Ketzad makriv chelik b'rosh. How exactly does this come about that the Kohen Gadol can be makriv the most chashiv portion? Omer, he simply walks into the Beis HaMikdash and announces, Oila zuani makriv. I'm going to be makriv this oila, or a portion of this oila. Mincha zuani makriv. This mincha I will bring on the mizbeach. Ketzad noitel chelak b'rosh. In what way will he take the most important chelak? In what way does he have first choice? Omer chatas zuani oichel. He says, I'm going to eat this chatas. Asham zani oichel. The same thing regarding the asham. So that's when it comes to korbanos. He can choose to be makriv the most important portion of the behemoth. He can take the most chashiv cut of meat of the korban. When it comes to shtei alechem, which was brought on Shavuos, or lechem apanim, which was actually switched every Shabbos and eaten by the kehanim, what rights does he have when it comes to those korbanos? Says the Brisa, v'noitel chala mishtei chalos. On Shavuos, where they brought 2 lechems, shtei alechem, he can take one of 2. Arba oy chamish ma'aseh lechem apanim. When it comes to lechem apanim, he has a privilege of taking 4 or 5. The Gemara soon will explain why 4 or 5. This is Tanakama, Rabbi Yehuda Kessler, Chamish, it's always 5. According to Rabbi, who always gets 50%. Why? Shenemar, V'hoisel Aaron Lebanov. Pasuk could have said, Lechem Apanim goes to the Kehanim. Why specify La'aron Ulebanov? It's coming to teach us, Mechzel La'aron, or Mechzel Lebanov. Aaron, who's the Kohen Gadol, has the privilege of taking half, 50%, of the lechem apanim. Lechem apanim was consisted of 12 chalas, and he'll get 5. Why 5? Why is that considered half? The Gemara will tell us somehow 2 were not part of this configuration, so we have 10, and the Aaron has a privilege of taking half, which is 5. So again, the Brisa began by describing the karbonis, then moved on to the shtei halechem brought on Shavuos. He has a right to take 1 of 2, 50%. When it comes to lechem apanim, Tanakama says 4 or 5. Rabbi says 5 because we have a pasuk which grants the Kohen Gadol equal rights. He has the same value as all the Kehanim combined. So they take whatever is there, they split into two parts, he gets half, and the rest is split amongst all the other Kehanim. Hogo for kasha. The Bryce itself is inherently difficult. First you begin by saying, Amris, noitel chala, achas mishtei chalas. When it comes Shavuos, we have a total of 2 chalas, brought with the 2 kvasim. Kohen Gadol gets 50%, 1 of 2. Whose shita is this? Mani, Rebbe. Apparently Rebbe's shita. The Amar Palga Shakel. He says Kohen Gadol gets half. Rabbanan didn't hold to that. They say he gets 4 or 5. He doesn't get 5. He doesn't have that same value as all the other Kahanim combined. So apparently when we say that the Kohen Gadol takes 1 of 2 chalas, this is Rebbe's shita. He gets 50%. Fine. Let's move on to the next part of the Bryce. By Lechem HaPanim, he gets Arba, Eichamish, Mimas Lechem HaPanim. 4 or 5. He doesn't get half. 4 or 5. Asan Rabbanan. This is following Shittas Rabbanan, the Amri. Loy Shakel Palga. He doesn't get 50%. He gets a bit less than half. So here we have Rabbanan Shita. We began with Rebbe. Now we have the Rabbanan. Ema Seifa. Let's proceed to the next part of the Bryce. Rebbe Eimer. Lo'ilam Chamish. He always gets 50%. Always gets half of the Lechem HaPanim, 5. So now first part of the Bryce was Rebbe. He gets 1 of 2 chalas, 50%. Next part of the Bryce, which maintains that he gets less than 50%, is Rabban. Next part of the Bryce, which tells us that he gets half, that's Rebbe again. Does that make sense? Reisha, the Sefer Rebbe. The first and last part of the Bryce is Rebbe. Umityos Rabbanan, middle is Rabbanan. Back and forth and back. Rabbi. Reisha Umityos Rabbanan. The truth is that the Reisha is also Rabban. Not only the middle part of the Bryce, but even the first part, which says that he gets 1 of 2 chalas on Shavuos, is the Rabban Shita. Why is he getting 50%? Umoid Rabban. Rabban agree in this case, but Prusa, that if it entails giving him a broken piece, a slice of challah, that doesn't make sense. Lav Eirach Aro, it's not Derech Eretz, Lemeis Vil Kohen Gadol, to grant him a piece of a challah. Therefore, we sacrifice the honor of the other Kehanim, and we sort of equate him with them. We give him 1 complete challah, a shalom. That's the first din in the Brisa. When it comes to Shavuos, he gets a full challah, not because technically he has a right to take 50%, but just practically. The alternative is breaking up a challah, which is not covered for him. We give him a whole challah. That's Rabbanon. And then the Brisa again continues with Shittas Rabbanon, by Lechem HaPanim. He gets only 4 or 5, which is less than 50%. And the Brisa concludes with Rabbi Shita. It's always half. Let's take a look at Rashi. So we're around, somewhere around the middle of the Amid. V'amar mar mishtei chalas. Mishtei chalas shel atzeres. Speaking about 2 chalas of Shavuos, he gets 1 of 2. When it comes to Lechem HaPanim, arba echamish, b'chol Shabbos v'Shabbos. We'll come in Mefarish, the Morson will explain what's this 4 or 5, must say arba, must say chamish. Rebbe, however, maintains Kohen Gadol has a right to take 50%. V'hoisel la'aron u'lebanav, b'lechem ha'panim ksiv. We learn mechza la'aron for Kohen Gadol, and mechza for the sons. So we take the entire supply, and half of it goes to the Kohen Gadol, and the rest to the other Kohen. Now, why is he only going to get 5? We have 12. It would seem that 50% of 12 is 6. V'afal b'shein shneim asar, yesh ben shtei chalos she'einen mischalkes. The Morson will explain 2 out of those 12 are not within the arrangement of chalukah. It's actually given to the new mishmar as payment for their troubles, for closing up the doors. We'll see in the Gemara soon. So we have to deduct 2 of 12, which really only gives us a starting point of 10 chalas, in which case the Kohen Gadol, according to Shittas Rebbe, gets 50%, which is 5. The Gemara began analyzing the Brisa up close. The Brisa begins that on Shavuos, Kohen Gadol gets 1 of 2. Apparently, in following Shittas Rebbe, that he gets 50%. Then the Brisa continues. When it comes to Lechem HaPanim, he doesn't necessarily get 50%, he gets 4 or 5. Asan l'Rabbanan, says Rashi. The Amri lo shakel palga. He's not entitled to half. They shakel palga because if he would get half, batzim mechamesh l'shakel, he would never get less than 5. So apparently Shittas Rabbanan. And then we conclude with Shittas Rebbe. Rebbe Amri lo chamesh. So we're going back and forth. Reisha mitzvos Rabbanan. This is Abaye's response. No. The entire Brisa, the beginning and the middle is Rabbanan. The Amri lo shakel palga, el batzim palga. Rabbanan maintain he's not entitled to half. He gets a bit less than half. And the svara for this, by the way, is Taisa says that unlike Rebbe, who learns from this pasuk that Aaron HaKohen gets 50% which places him in equal footing to all the other Kehanim. It would seem from the Gemara that the pshat, according to Rebbe, is that he's not part of the Chalukah. He doesn't split the Lechem Apanim with them. He's in an entirely different, class of his own. He's Kohen Gadol. He's the Rosh. He's the head of the guf, like the head of the body. It's not considered like another Aver. He controls the whole body. He's in a different realm. Kohen Gadol was not part of the Chalukah. He gets 50%. That's his cut. And then the rest is split amongst the Kehanim. When he gets 50%, you're putting him above everybody else. He's not splitting it with them. He's entitled to his share, which is 50%. And then they begin splitting amongst themselves. So it puts him above the rest in a different category. That's Rebbe Shita. We're going to from the Pasuk. Mechzel Aaron, Mechzel Banav. The Rabbanan maintain, it would seem from Tosfos, that it's a point of kavod. The Rabbanan held that it's inconceivable to say that the Kohen Gadol gets the same amount as all the other Kehanim. It's not kavod that he should be equal to them. He should be shakol keneged kulam. That's why the Rabbanan preferred not to dash in the pasuk in this way, but he still gets a lot. As the Tosfos Shanim says, they learn the pasuk a bit differently. V'yisel Aaron l'banav means lav dafka that he gets a share which is equal to all the other Kehanim combined. Ella says the Tosfos Shanim karv l'mechza, close to half, a bit under half. In today's business world, you have 49% of the corporation. You're a minority shareholder, although you're almost 50%, almost majority. No, 49 is still considered a shareholder like everybody else. But once you have 50% or more, now you're a majority shareholder. You're half the company. It's more than just a typical shareholder. So the Rabbanan maintain the Kohen Gadol is also a shareholder. He's machalik with them, although he gets a significantly larger chelik, but it's still within the context of chalukah, of splitting and sharing it amongst the Kehanim. You don't place him in a different realm. He gets a big chelik, but it's still a chelik amongst the other chalukah. That's the svara, the reasoning, the lumdus behind the machlekes. Rebbe puts him above the rest. He's not within the chalukah altogether. And the Rabbanan say, well, he must split it with them, although he could get a rather large share. Okay, getting back to Rashi. Reisha Mitzvah Rabbanan, the Amri lo Shakal Palgal Batzer and Palgal. Abai maintains the first part and the second of the part of the Brisa follow Shittas Rabbanan, that the Kohen Gadol is not entitled to half; he has to get less than half. Or the Kashilach Chalad Shtei Lechem, the Shakal Kula. So why then is it that when it comes to Shtei Lechem, he's entitled to an entire lechem, 1 out of 2? My Rabbanan lav oirach ara limifrasei lamezah prusas Kohen Gadol. The Rabbanan agree. In that case, we have no choice because it's not appropriate to give him a broken piece of bread, a slice. Therefore, we give him the entire challah. So Tosfos Rambam explains that this svara of kavod Kohen Gadol outweighs the other svara. You're trying to avoid negating the other Kehanim by giving him equal share to all of them. Well, on the other hand, you're going to give him a broken piece, which is not covered. So we prefer giving him the entire shalem, not to step on his honor, even though it's slightly at the expense of the other Kehanim. So when faced with the choice of who's covered to address, certainly Kohen Gadol takes precedence. This is Abaye's pshat, the first part of the Brisa, where he gets 1 out of 2 shtei lechem, is Rabbanon. The middle part, which says he doesn't get 50% lechem panim, is Rabbanon once again. The Brisa concludes with Rebbe. He always gets 50% of the lechem panim. Now the Rabbanon use an interesting term. He will get 4 or 5, arba or chamesh of lechem panim. How does that work? Says the Gemara, umay arba or chamesh. What do we mean 4 or 5? 1 4 or 1 5? Explains it more like this. There is a machlekes between Rabban and Rabbi Yehuda in Masechah Sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the new Mishmar got a special bonus. See, they would switch the Mishmars on Shabbos. The old Mishmar finished their week on Shabbos, the new Mishmar came in and began their Avodah. Now the previous Mishmar opened all the doors and gates at the beginning of the Yom Shabbos, and the newcomers would have to lock all of them, close them up and lock them. This was a job. So we gave them a bonus for that. We gave them 2 chalis, which were outside the din chalukah. It was like a payment, like a fee for their work. So although we began with 12, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the true chalukah only took place with 10 remaining chalas. Whereas according to Rabbanan, no, they took all 12 and split it equally. That's how we're going to understand our brayso. Let's see. My arba chamish. What do you mean 4 or 5? L'Rabbanan the Amri nichnas yonetel sheish. V'yoytzel netel sheish. According to the Rabbanan who maintained there was no fee paid to the newcomers. They took the entire supply of the chapanim and split it equally, 6 to this mishmar, 6 to that one. Uschar hagofais dalsis, and payment for closing up the dalsis, the doors loy shakel, the new mishmar would not accept payment for that. In which case, you have 12. Mishtem esrei boi miflak. You have to go ahead and split up 12. And the Kohen Gadol, since he's entitled to a large portion, but not half, has to be less than half. If you begin with 12, half is 6. You can't have half. He has to have 1 less. But you deduct 1 from that half, which ends up being 5. Chamesh shakil, the Kohen Gadol ends up with 5 chalas. So that's if you began with 12. Half is 6. You can't give him half. According to Rabbanan, deduct 1, give him 5. Rabbi Yehuda the Amar nichnas noitel sheva, but according to Rabbi Yehuda maintains that 2 chalas were granted to the newcomers, the new mishmar, on account of their closing up the doors and the gates chore. So 2 chalas are given to them as payment, a fee for their services. Nichnas, the new mishmar coming in, noitel sheva, it takes 7 chalas. Right, it began with 12. 2 is given to the new mishmar coming in, and the remaining 10 you split between the new and the old mishmar, giving the new mishmar a total of 7, and the old mishmar a total of 5. So the new mishmar gets 7. Why? Shtayim b'schar hagofes delasais, 2 as payment for closing up the doors. V'yoytze noitel chamesh, and the previous mishmar receives 5. In which case, 2 are really out of the configuration, out of the arrangement. 2 is a fee, payment for their job, leaving you with only 10 chalas. May eser boy miflak. We have to split. Kohen Gadol has to get his portion from 10. Half of 10 is 5. Rabbanan maintain you don't get half. Batzur chadim and palg, you have to deduct 1 from that half. V'shakal arba, which leaves him with 4 chalas. Let's take a look at Rashi inside here, from the top of the Amud. Umay arba chamish. What do you mean? Some things you get 4, something gets 5. Masai arba, masai chamish. One is it 4, one is it 5. Explains the Gemara. The Rabbanan, the Pliga, Rabbi Yehuda, Brega Chalil. According to Rabbanan, disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. They hold the 12 breads are split equally. V'amri mishmar yotzin etel sheish, mishmar nichnas etel sheish. The outgoing as well as the incoming, each one takes 6 chalas. No etel sheish chalas. Uschar hagafes dalses lo shakel mishmar nichnas. The incoming mishmar will not take any payment for closing up the doors. Nimtzu kulan bois b'machlekes. Turns out that all 12 are part of the chalukah. Umachalkois v'kohen gadol cholekim shteyen. And the Kohen Gadol will take his portion from both the mishmaris. Umishtem asher by miflak, and he has to take his chelik from 12. Umechza shalom eninaitel. He can't take a complete half. Basur chadim epalki. Deduct 1 from half. Half was 6. 6 of 12. Deduct 1 chametz shakel, which leaves him with 5 chalas. Rabbi Yehuda Dama nichnas etel shtayim. He holds that the incoming mishmar takes 2 extra on account of his job. Below machlekes, it's out of the machlekes, out of the chalukah arrangement. B'schar shumei makif, because it's payment for closing up l'matzei Shabbos, dalsis hazora v'cheil v'hechav v'lishkos shepaschu b'shachris mishmar shiyatzaloi. So he's closing up all those doors. So he gets 2 on account of his troubles. Now this was an ongoing arrangement. The previous mishmar, he realized, took 2 as well for his job. So this was an ongoing arrangement that the incoming mishmar will take 2 extra on account of his troubles. In which case you only have 10 to begin with, to split up. Me'eser by miflag. The Kohen Gadol has to split from 10, has to take his chelik from 10. She'ein hashtayim bois machlekes, because the first 2 given as a fee were not really part of the machlekes, not part of the arrangement here. Kischarim, it was their payment, it was their fee. So it's not considered part of the overall supply of lechem hapanim, which is split amongst the kehanim. You first take care of business, and then you go ahead and you split the rest. So now we only have 10 to begin with. Butzer chadim epalka, you deduct 1 from half, the eser, half of 10 is 5. V'shakal arba, the Kohen Gadol walks away with 4. So again, according to the Rabbanon, you don't give 2 as a payment. And the Gemara says, Mishtei boy miflag. Kohen Gadol has to be miflag, has to take his part from the entire 12. And since he can't take half, he has to take 5. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, the incoming mishmar gets an extra 2 for his work. So you're really only left with 10. May eser boy miflag. Kohen Gadol has to split his chel, has to take his chel from 10. He can't take half. He takes only 4. So this is the first pshat in the Brisa, Abaye's pshat. The first and second part of the Brisa following Shitas Rabbanon. The reason why he takes one of the 2 chalis on Shavuos is because we don't want to split a challah and give it to him as a broken challah. The reason why by the Chamapanim he takes 4 or 5, well, it depends. If you start with 12, then he takes 5, because half of 12 is 6, he doesn't take half, he only takes 5. If you start only with 10, according to Rabbi Yehuda, so he ends up with 1 less than half, which is 4. Continues the Gemara, Rava Amar Kula Rabbi. I maintain the entire Brisa is Rabbi. The first part which says Kohen Gadol gets 1 of 2 chalas on Shavuos, 50%, that's Rabbi. The next part of the Brisa, that by Lechem HaPanim he gets 4 or 5, again that's Rabbi. V'sava like Rabbi Yehuda. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda, who grants 2 chalas to the incoming mishmar. Those 2 are not part of the chalukah arrangement, so you only have 10 to begin with. Now, why does he get 4 or 5? He should get 5. According to Rabbi, he's entitled to half. Oh, ve'elamai arba. Why does he get 4? Hachamish boy lemishkel. He should always get 5. Half of 10. Like kasha, the answer is like this. We have another factor to reckon with. Ha'de'ika mishmar misakiv. One scenario is describing a case where there was a mishmar, a group of kahanim, which was misakiv, was lingering behind, staying behind, when Yom Tov fell out near Shabbos, close to Shabbos, before Shabbos, or close to Shabbos, following Shabbos, in which case they didn't want to go home, they didn't have enough time, they stayed behind. In which case we have to give them something for their staying behind. They're entitled to something, Lechem HaPanim. We give all those mishmaris which decide to stay behind, or come early, in advance of Yom Tov. Right, let's say Yom Tov falls out on Monday, they decide to come before Shabbos, or Yom Tov ends on Thursday and decide to stick around for next Shabbos. So all those mishmars get something, they get 2 chalas. In which case, although you began with 12, 2 you gave to the new mishmar on account of their closing the doors, locking up the sha'arim, so you left with 10. Then you went down to 8, because 2 you have to give to the mishmar misakiv. In which case, Kohen Gadol comes to take his portion, 50% of 8 is only 4. The lack of mishmar misakiv. When the Brisa says he can get 5, we're speaking when there was no mishmar misakiv here. All you had was the old and the new mishmar, who are splitting the lechem amongst themselves. So you begin with 12. 2 is granted to the new mishmar, in which case you left with 10. Kohen Gadol gets half, which is 5. I'ika mishmar misakiv, mishmoina boy lemiflik. If you have a mishmar misakiv, so you have to give 2 to that mishmar misakiv. So although you began with 12, 2 you gave to the mishmar who were locking the doors. Another 2 you gave me to the mishmar misakiv, mishmoina boy lemiflik. You have only 8, from which the Kohen Gadol gets his portion, v'shakal arba, he gets half, which is 4. Ileka mishmar misakiv. If you have no mishmar misakiv, just a typical Shabbos throughout the year, me'eser boy lemiflik. So you're splitting from 10, because you began with 12. 2, of course, you gave to the new mishmar for closing up the doors, leaving you with 10. V'shakal chamish, and the Kohen Gadol gets half, which is 5. Let's take a look at Rashi inside. 6 lines from the top. Rava maintains Kula Rebbe. The Brisa here is following Shittas Rebbe. The Omer Palgo Shakal can go entitled to half. V'sav Rabbi Yehuda. The Ein Hashtayim Mischakas Leil. Number 1, he holds that 2 you give away to the incoming mishmar, pay them a fee for their troubles, leaving us with 10. So why does Rebbe say sometimes Kohen Gadol gets 4 or 5? What do you mean? What's 4? What's 5? Elamai Ar. Hachamish Boil Mishkal. He should have taken 5, which is half of 10. Like Hash. Explains Rashi like this. At times Yom Tov falls out on Monday. You'll have a mishmar who advances, they come before Shabbos, and they stay around till Yom Tov. Shekol mishmaris boys beregel. All mishmaris come and do avodah during Yom Tov. So that's one example of a mishmar misakiv. They came in advance of Yom Tov. Yom Tov fell out on Monday. They decided to come before Shabbos. Or you can have a case other way around. Ipamim shemoitzoy Yom Tov erev Shabbos. Yom Tov concludes on Thursday. V'mishmaris hoichoislim coming erev Shabbos. And on Friday, all the mishmaris go back home. But there was a mishmar that decided to stick around for Shabbos. V'yesh mishmar shemisakiv sham ad Motzei Shabbos. They decided to linger around, to stay there till Motzei Shabbos. So this is another example of mishmar misakiv. Rather than coming in advance of Yom Tov, they decided to stay, to delay past Yom Tov. And they happened to be there on Shabbos. Now, why are they entitled to anything? This is not really their rotation. With Tanan Masechas Sukkah, Shabbos Shabbateicha Regel. When a Shabbos falls out on Yom Tov itself, Shabbos Chalamoid, Hayukol Mishmaris Shabbos Bechiluk Lechem Apanim. All the Mishmaris who are present on Yom Tov, as we mentioned earlier, they all come to avoid on Yom Tov. They're entitled as well to take a Chiluk and Lechem Apanim. They're equally entitled. V'chein Yom Tov HaSamach L'Shabbos. The same thing applies to a Yom Tov which hugs Shabbos, which is either right before Shabbos, or on a Friday, or right after Shabbos on a Sunday. Bein Mafaneh. Shein Yecholim Lashav B'Shabbos L'Mkamin, whether Yom Tov falls out on Friday, in which case the Mishmaris don't have an opportunity to go back home before Shabbos, Bein Melachareh, or whether Yom Tov falls out after Shabbos on Sunday. Shal Karchan Hemakdim Lavid Ber Shabbos. In that case, they can't come just to cover Yom Tov. They have to come Friday. In that case, says Rashi, although this Shabbos isn't technically your Shabbos Chalamoid, it's either a day following Yom Tov, if Yom Tov ended on Friday, or a day preceding Yom Tov, if Yom Tov falls out on Sunday. Still and all, even in this case, Hayukol Mishmaris Shabbos B'chiluk Lechem Apanim. In this case as well, the Mishmaris have all equal rights to get Lechem Apanim. Why? Because they have to be here. It's part of the Yom Tov arrangement. They had no choice. They couldn't have come any other time. So it's like the Yom Tov is extended into Shabbos. They have to be there for Shabbos. Says Rashi, this has a din as though it's a Shabbos within Yom Tov. Because Yom Tov mandates, Yom Tov requires that they be here, even during the Shabbos. So that's a rather simple halacha. Just as they have an equal right to get Lechem Apanim on Yom Tov itself, they have a right to get equal Lechem Apanim from this Shabbos, which is either the day before Yom Tov or the day after Yom Tov, because they're forced to be here for Shabbos. However, if there is a day in between, suppose Yom Tov ended on Thursday, in which case technically they could have gone home for Shabbos, they didn't have to stick around. Or if Yom Tov begins on a Monday, in which case they could have come Sunday, but they chose to be here for Shabbos as well. So this is not really their true entitlement. It's not really a Yom Tov Shabbos. Chal Yom Echad L'Hafzik Ben Time. There's one day in between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Oy Milfaneh. Whether the Yom Tov preceded the Shabbos, Kigon Shekola Hamoed B'Chamish B'Shabbos. Yom Tov ended on Thursday, and you have one day in between Yom Tov and Shabbos, which allows for them to go back home. Oy Machareh, or if Yom Tov fell out after Shabbos on a Monday, Shishla Hamoed B'Sheni B'Shabbos. Yom Tov fell out on Monday, in which case technically they could have just come for Yom Tov. They didn't have to be here for Shabbos. They weren't required to come before Shabbos. In that case, we don't give it the same halacha. Einon Shabbos, they don't have equal rights to this Lechem Apanim as though it would be Yom Tov. Ella, rather we do as follows. We give them something. Mishmar Misakim B'Shabbos. This Mishmar, which happens to be here, which is either being delayed or coming in advance, but is here for Shabbos. Bein Shu Mishmar Echad, Bein Shu Mishmar Sabre, irrelevant whether we're speaking about one group of Kahanim or many Mishmaris, they still take the same two chalis and split it amongst themselves. Noitoch shtei chalis. So that goes off the list. We give them two, v'ashar mischalkos l'mishmar hayoyte v'nichnas, and the rest of the chalis we split evenly between the incoming and the outgoing mishmar, who are truly entitled to the Lechem Apanim of this Shabbos. Shizman kavul es Shabbos. Those mishmaris who are meant to be here this time around. Says the Pshat in the Brisa, Rabbi says the Kohen Gadol at times gets 4, at times at 5. And the response was, really we're starting with 12, but 2, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is granted as payment for the incoming Mishmar's job, for the fact that they had to go and close up the doors which were opened by the previous Mishmar. So 2 are off the table, leaving us with 10. So why does he only get 4? The answer is because another 2 had to be given to these Mishmaris, who either came early or stayed around after Yom Tov. 2 we give them, leaving us with only 8 for these 2 Mishmaris, whose true rotation is this week. And 50% of 8 is 4. And that's what the Kohen Gadol walks away with. Let's get back to the Gemara. One more line. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, that the Bryce is following Shitas Rebbe. My Rabbi Omer Lo'elam Chamish. Why does the Bryce conclude those words? Rabbi Omer Lo'elam Chamish. What do you mean Lo'elam Chamish? We just explained. Firstly, the entire Bryce was Rebbe. So why do we mention his name again? Rabbi Omer. Number 2, Lo'elam Chamish. Kohen Gadol always gets 5. Just explain. It's not always so. Sometimes 4, sometimes 5. Kasha. We leave it as an unresolved kasha. So in summation, we discussed the chalukah of the shtei alechem on Shavuos and lechem apanim on Shabbos. We have a brisa which tells us that by shtei alechem, Kohen Gadol takes 1 of 2. By lechem apanim, 4 or 5. The brisa concludes Rabbi Omer Lo'elam Chamish. We have 2 ways to explain the brisa. We have Bayis Pshat, who tells us that the brisa is following Shittas Rabbanon, and although Rabbanon maintain Kohen Gadol doesn't take 50%, he's meant to take a chelik with the other Kohanim. We don't put him a cut above the rest. He's part of the arrangement here. He gets a rather large chelik, but not 50%. Why then does he get 1 of the shtei alechem? Because we want to give him a shalom rather than a broken challah. The Brisa continues, and again, Shitas Rabbanon, that Kohen Gadol cannot take 50%. So by lechem apanim, he gets either 4 or 5. How do we get to those numbers? Well, it depends whose shita we're following. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that the incoming Mishmar receives 2 breads as a schar for their job, for closing up the doors which were opened by the previous Mishmar. So those 2 lechem apanim were not part of the chalukah, it was a schar, leaving us with only 10 to split amongst the Kehanim. And the Kohen Gadol, being that he's not entitled to 50%, we don't give him 5, only give him 4. When the Brisa said he gets 5, this is in line with Shittas Rabbanon, who maintain there's no such thing as paying the new Mishmar for their work. We have 12 in total, and that is meant to be distributed amongst the Kehanim. Kohen Gadol will not get half, he's meant to get less than half. So instead of 6, he gets 5. That's Shittas Rabbanon. And Rebbe says, Lo'elam Chamish, he always gets 5. Why? Because Rebbe holds 2 are given to the new Mishmar for closing up the doors, leaving us a total of 10. Kohen Gadol gets 50%, which is 5. That's Abaye's approach. Rava's approach is that the Brisa is following Shittas Rebbe from beginning to end. That explains why by the shtei alechem he gets 1 chal, it's half. Now, why by the lechem apanim does Rebbe say sometimes 4, sometimes 5? The reason is as follows: all the Kohen Gadol is entitled to 50%, but perhaps we only have 8 to begin with. How's that? Although we had 12, 2 went to the new Mishmar, and according to Shittas Rabbi Yehuda, it's payment for their work. That puts us down to 10. Another 2 are given to the Mishmar Mes'akev. We're speaking about there's a Mishmar which stayed behind after Yom Tov or came in advance of Yom Tov. They're entitled to 2 lechem apanim. So we give them 2, which brings us down to only 8. 50% is 4, which the Kohen Gadol walks away with. When Rebbe says sometimes it's 5, we're speaking when there's no Mishmar Mes'akev, your typical Shabbos throughout the year, in which case you start with 12. 2 goes to the Mishmar Nichnas for Schar Hagofas Dalsais, leaving us with 10. Kohen Gadol walks away with half, which is 5. The kasha was, why is Rebbe Omer Lo'elam Chamish? What is that? How does that come into the picture? We already discussed Rebbe at great length and great detail. Why does the Brisa conclude Rebbe Omer Lo'elam Chamish? And we'll leave it kasha. Okay, let's do a quick chazara. We had 2 kashas regarding the placement of the lishkas within the lishkas Beis HaMikdash. Regarding the location of lishkas Atzloim, was it in this corner or that corner? Regarding lishkas lechem apanim, was it here, was it there? The Gemara concluded there really is no machlekes. All agree lishkas Atzloim was in the Marav Darim corner. Lishkas Lechem Apanim was in the Mizrach Darim corner. Why does one Mishnah describe it this way, one Mishnah the other? It just depends on which direction you're coming from, and it's relative to your angle, but in reality, all agree that the Lishkas was situated in the same exact place. We concluded with the Kohen Gadol's privilege to go ahead and be makriv any carbon, to eat any carbon, and we concluded regarding his chelik of the lechem apanim, or shtel lechem mana shvuos. We have a pasuk which says voisel Aaron lebanav. We have a chelek how to interpret that pasuk. Rabbi holds Aaron gets 50% and his children 50%. Rabbanim maintain, although he gets a rather large-sized portion, but it's within the chalukah configuration. He has to split it with them. He's not 50%. He's not equal in value to all of them combined. He has to do a chalukah, although he gets a large chalukah, but less than 50%. We had a brisa, and we had two ways to interpret the brisa, according to Rebbe, or according to the Rabbah. Hatzlacha Rabbi to you and Kol Tov.